Hi, my name is Nicole. Welcome to my channel, Travel to Money. In this video, I am going to tell you all about Pego, Spain, which happens to be the beautiful little town where I own two homes. I'll share about where it is, the history, what the home prices are like, all the stores and restaurants it has to offer, and many other reasons why I love this little town. If you are new here, I have created this channel to help you learn about how to travel, adventure, and have fun on the road to financial independence. I have traveled the world, I own a couple of houses in Spain, and I'm on a creative journey to financial independence. I believe the road to financial freedom can and should be fun. I hope you'll subscribe and join me on this journey, no matter where you are starting from. Back in 2017, during my first world travel adventure, I stayed at a townhouse in the town of Oliva, Spain. I really enjoyed it there, and the next year when I saw a listing for a townhouse in Pego, Spain that was a crazy good deal, I was pleasantly surprised to see that Pego was just one town over from where I had stayed in Oliva, which helped me to make the decision to make a deposit on the house before even seeing it in person. When I arrived in Spain, the first time I went to see the house, it was raining all day and I couldn't really get a good idea of what the town was like. The next time I had the opportunity to drive into town on a beautiful day, I was overwhelmed in the most wonderful way. Seeing this town partially surrounded by mountains with a church steeple seen for miles, it was more charming than I could have imagined. I had liked Oliva, but how lucky was I to end up in adorable Pego? This town is more than I could have dreamed of. The history of Pego dates back to the Arab occupation. The area around Pego was initially settled during the Bronze Age, then afterward by both Iberian and Roman civilizations. But they say the story actually begins during the time of the Moors around 726 as part of Arab jurisdiction. It was conquered in the 1200s by James I, the longest reigning monarch on the Iberian Peninsula, which is made up of Spain and Portugal, as well as a small area of southern France, Gibraltar, and Andorra. You can learn more about Andorra in this video right here. During Moorish times, Pego was a walled city with a castle and 16 towers. Most of this was destroyed in the early 1700s during the War of Spanish Succession. You can find remains of the wall in the Old Town area, which still holds medieval charm. Much like many places in Europe, Pego is completely walkable. If I'm not driving to another city, I don't often use my car in the town. Pego has a population of just over 10,000 people, many of whom are expats, which is common throughout Spain because Spain is such a wonderful place to live. There are several grocery stores such as Mercadona, Aldi, and Massimas. My house is just a 5-minute walk from two of them. One of the things I have loved about living in Pego is that the neighbors that you get to know will often just knock on your door if they have a question or want to let you know something, even if they have your phone number. I feel like it is a rewind back to when I was a kid and we didn't have phones. Spain is a very relational country, and you will experience various forms of that even as a visitor. Not long after I had moved into my house, one of the neighbors on my street brought me 4 decorative tiles and a lovely note welcoming me. I'm sure there are still some places in America where you might receive that sort of hospitality from your neighbors, but I certainly haven't experienced that in a very long time. I guess what I'm trying to say is that life in Spain is just more simple in some ways, and you don't even realize that you've been missing the simplicity until it's staring you in the face. For being such a small town, you might think that your restaurant options are limited, but we have quite the variety of cuisine. One of my favorite spots to eat is an Indian restaurant called Buddha Eyes Tandoori Restaurant. There is also Chinese food, several pizza places, and even one restaurant that I would consider higher end. There is also a place that has great food where I usually just go for a coffee. It's called Casino Bar. One of the things that is different in Spain and several other places in Europe is that the place you go for coffee is also the place you go to get drinks, and in some cases like this one is a place where you can go for a meal. After going regularly to Casino Bar, I still don't understand exactly when food is served and what days it closes early. I have had quite the time trying to figure out the schedule of most places, and trust me when I say that you can't count on Google Maps because most store and restaurant times are not updated regularly. Pego doesn't have its own Leroy Merlin, which is the big hardware store that is comparable to Lowe's or Home Depot, but it does have a smaller hardware store where you can find most of the things you are looking for. I think I've established by now that just about everything you could need for everyday living you can find within the little town of Pego. I just love walking the streets, seeing the beautiful parks, the various church buildings, and saying hello to the people you pass on the street. In most cities throughout Spain, there will be one day of the week where an outdoor market is held. Here you can buy everything from fresh produce to vintage clothing to knockoff clothing to specialty or handmade products. Personally, I love shopping for vintage clothing or vintage anything really. One time when we were at one of the markets, I saw a leather briefcase of sorts, a very vintage computer sort of item. I saw that the price was around $3, but before buying it, I thought I would Google the brand. It turns out that it was an Italian leather brand that sells those type of briefcases new for over $1,000. This type of treasure is everywhere in the Spanish markets. Vintage Nike, Adidas, and so much more. One of the things I love about the location of Pego is that even though it is surrounded by the most beautiful mountains, it is also only a 15-minute drive to the beach. There is also a magnesium spring where you can swim in the healing waters for free that is very close by. Valencia and Alicante, two incredible cities, are each only a 1-hour drive. Gandia, Oliva, and many other towns are nearby as well. Technically, Pego is part of the Alicante region, though it shares much of what happens in the Valencia region, like the Fallas Festival every March. If you wanted to visit Pego, there are Airbnb rentals for the entire space for less than $50 per night. If you want to buy a house in Pego like me, there are definitely deals that might surprise most Americans. If you watched some of my previous videos, you'd know that I own 2 houses in Spain. More specifically, I own 2 houses in Pego. I purchased one for around 20,000 euro, and the second one, which needs a total rehab, I purchased for 5,000 euro. Based on the currency exchange rates at the time, I spent around 30,000 US dollars to purchase both houses. If you watched those videos, you also know that I don't live on the best street in the city. In fact, it might be considered the worst street in the city. It's not dangerous or anything like that. It's just that some of the homes are occupied by Romani families who live a bit differently and are generally looked down upon in society. All of that to say, you would probably pay more for homes on any other street, but there are still going to be incredible deals. I just looked at some of the properties in Pego that are listed on Idealista, and there are several properties for under 50,000 euro and a whole lot under 100,000 euro. You want to know some other good news if you are American? For the first time since 2002, the dollar is currently worth more than the euro. It's almost unheard of. So right now in October of 2022, your dollar will go further in Europe than any other time in the last 20 years. Something to think about. I've got a lot of videos that will help you understand the process of home ownership in Spain. You can check out my Spain playlist here. And if you end up transferring money to Europe, make sure you use Wise. I've got a link to it in the description. You get a better exchange rate than almost anywhere, and the fees are so much lower, especially if you're talking about transferring big money. So much lower than doing a wire transfer. I transfer money to my Spanish bank account all the time, and it is literally in the account within seconds, which is funny because I can't even get that accomplished between my US bank accounts. Surprise, surprise. Now, I love Pego for so many reasons. I'm not sure that I would recommend it for your vacation destination unless you are really wanting to just unplug and enjoy a small European town, but for living, I find it hard to beat. The best times of year to visit, in my opinion, are spring and fall. The climate is Mediterranean and it is generally pleasant. The summers can be very hot, though winter is relatively mild. One of my favorite things to do during the spring is to lay in bed at night with the patio door open from my room and watch the moon and the stars hanging over the mountains. It's usually in the 50s or 60s during that time, and one of the great things about this area is that there aren't a lot of bugs. If you did that in Florida, you'd be covered in insects, but in Pego, you can easily leave the door or windows open with nothing more than an occasional fly. I can't wait to get back to Pego. I'll be headed there hopefully sometime in the next month or two to begin the plans on the renovation of my second house. I hope you'll subscribe and join me for that project and every Sunday where travel and adventure build financial freedom. I can't wait to see where your dreams will take you.